The MVP race has stopped making sense, and that is the main reason people cannot look away from it. Every few days, the answer seems to change. One player puts up a huge game, and people say the race is over. Then another player drops 40 or carries his team to a big win, and suddenly the whole story changes again. This year does not feel like a normal MVP battle. It feels like 4 different MVP seasons are happening at the same time. In most years, one of these cases would be enough to end the talk early. A player would pull ahead, the media would settle on one name, and everyone else would be left fighting for second place. But this season keeps moving in every direction at once. That is why the debate has become so loud, so messy, and so hard to call. It is not because there is no great answer. It is because there are too many great answers. When people talk about MVP, they always act like the award should be simple. They say it should go to the best player, or the player with the most impact, or the player with the best numbers, or the best player on the best team. But the truth is, those are not always the same person. That is where the problem starts. If you care most about raw numbers, one player looks like the clear choice. If you care most about winning, another player jumps to the front. If you care about all-around control of the game, someone else takes the lead. If you care about who changed the whole feeling of a team, then the answer shifts again. That is why this race keeps flipping. Everyone is using a different meaning of value, and every side can point to something real. So when fans argue, they are not always disagreeing on the players. A lot of the time, they are disagreeing on the meaning of the award itself. Nikola Jokic has one of the strongest cases because he keeps doing things that should not look this easy. With him, the game slows down, but the defense still cannot stop him. He scores, he passes, he controls the floor, and he makes everyone around him better. His numbers are so full that people have started to act like they are normal, and that may be the strangest part of all. A near 30-point triple-double should break the internet every night, but with Jokic, people almost shrug now because he has made rare things feel common. That should help his case, but in a weird way, it also hurts him. When greatness becomes expected, people stop reacting to it the same way. They move the standard higher and higher until even amazing feels routine. Jokic is a victim of his own level. He is so good so often that people start looking for reasons not to be impressed. That doesn't make sense, but that is part of the MVP story this year. Then there is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and his case feels different from Jokic right away. Shai does not need the same kind of loud stat line every night to take over the conversation. His game hits people in a different way. He looks sharp, calm, smooth, and fully in control. He gets to his spots, makes hard shots look easy, and keeps his mistakes low. He is not just scoring a lot. He is scoring in a way that feels steady and clean. And when you look at how often he puts together strong games without falling off, his season becomes even more impressive. Consistency matters in a race like this, maybe more than people admit. Big moments get headlines, but doing it over and over again is what builds a real MVP case. Shai has had that kind of year. He has been great without many weak nights, and when your team is also sitting near the top, that matters even more. That team's success is a huge part of why Shai stays near the center of the race. Fair or not, MVP has always been tied to winning. If a player is great but his team is not near the top, people start looking for reasons to move him down. If a player is leading one of the best teams in the league, the story becomes easier to sell. Shai has that working for him. He is not just putting up star numbers, he is doing it while leading a team that keeps winning and keeps looking serious. That gives his case a clean shape. It is easy for voters to look at him and say, this is the best player on one of the best teams, and he has been elite from start to finish. That kind of story has won MVP before, and it could win again. Even if other players have louder single numbers in some areas, Shai has the kind of season that voters usually. It feels like one player bending the whole game around himself. He can put up huge points, pile up assists, and do it with the ball in his hands on almost every key play. When Luka goes on one of those late-season runs where he is close to 40 a night, people start changing their opinions fast. That is because scoring at that level is impossible to ignore. It creates momentum. It creates clips, headlines, and fan support. It creates the feeling that the race has changed, even if the full season still matters more.
Luka has that kind of power in a debate. He can make people feel like they were sleeping on him, and once that feeling starts, his case grows very quickly. The hard part for Luka is that MVP is not chosen only by fans or by highlights. It is shaped by timing, by team position, by media feel, and by what the full season looks like when people step back. Luka may have stretches where he looks like the most unstoppable player alive, but the race is not decided only by who had the loudest month. That is why his case feels both strong and unstable at the same time. If you are looking at pure takeover power, he is right there with anyone. If you are looking at who can own the game by force, few players compare. But when people zoom out and start looking at records, long-term control, and the full shape of the season, that is where things get harder. Luka makes the strongest emotional case at times, but MVP is often decided by people trying to turn emotion into a clean final answer. Victor Wembanyama changes the whole debate because his value does not always sit in the easy places. Some players make their case with points, assists, and box score noise. Wemby makes part of his case in fear. Teams see him near the rim and change their minds. Guards drive, look up, and pull the ball back out. Shooters rush, big men hesitate, whole plays die because he is standing in the right spot. That kind of impact is real, but it is harder for casual fans to measure. On offense, he can still score and stretch the floor, but it is the defensive side that makes him feel different. And when people start adjusting for pace, minutes, and team effect, his season begins to look much bigger than it first appears. That is why so many people feel like he belongs in the middle of this race, even if the simple stats do not scream the loudest. What makes Wemby's case so interesting is that it pushes people to ask a hard question. What if the most valuable player is not the one with the prettiest numbers or the cleanest team record? What if it is the player whose presence changes the shape of the game the most? That is where his supporters get loud. When he is on the floor, the whole team feels different. The defense tightens. The floor feels smaller for the other side. The level of danger changes. That matters. And if his team made a jump that nobody expected, people will naturally ask how much of that came from him. The trouble is, MVP history is not always kind to players on teams that do not sit at the very top. So Wemby's case feels powerful, but also uphill. It is the kind of case people love to talk about, even if they are not always ready to vote for it. This is where advanced stats enter the room and make everything even more confusing.
Every time people think one number will settle the debate, another number says something different. One metric puts Shy on top, another says Jokic, another loves Wemby's impact, another brings Luka back into the fight. So instead of solving the race, the numbers create more arguments. That is because advanced stats can help explain value, but they cannot fully define it. They can show trends, strengths, and influence, but they still depend on what they are measuring and how they are built. Fans often treat one stat like it is the final answer, only because it supports the player they already wanted to pick. That is why the race feels so wild. Even the smart numbers are not fully on the same page. And when the numbers fight each other, the debate gets louder instead of clearer. At some point, people turn back to wins because wins feel simple. They may not tell the full story, but they still matter in this award. Voters like players who lift teams high. They like stars who sit at the top of the standings and give the season a clean story. That is one reason Shy stays so strong in the race. If his team keeps winning at a high level and he remains the main face of that success, his case becomes easy to hold on to. Jokic may have the all-around numbers. Luka may have the scoring storms. Wemby may have the strongest swing on both ends. But team success still acts like a filter. It does not decide everything, but it shapes what people are willing to accept. That may not feel fair in every case, but it has been true for years, and it is still true now. Still, team success can also fool people if they do not look deeper. Basketball is not a one-man sport. Coaching matters, teammates matter, health matters, depth matters. Some players step into great setups. Others spend the whole year trying to keep a shaky team from falling apart. Those are not the same jobs. A player on a top team may look cleaner because the team around him is stronger. A player on a weaker team may be doing just as much or even more, but getting less credit because the results are harder to see.
That is why on-off impact matters to so many people in this debate. When a team looks alive with a player and broken without him, that says something. It may not tell the whole story, but it tells part of it. And this year, some of these MVP names create huge swings when they step on the floor. That kind of impact is where Jokic and Wemby become very hard to ignore. With Jokic, the offense feels like it has a brain every second he is out there. He reads the floor early, makes the defense choose, and punishes whatever choice they make. He is not always the fastest or the flashiest, but the game bends to him. That is real value. Wemby, on the other hand, changes the shape of the game more like a force of nature. He shuts off space. He turns easy looks into bad ones. He gives his team a safety net that most teams simply do not have. Their value looks different, but both are huge. One runs the game like a machine. The other breaks the other team's plan before it can even start. That is why the race feels impossible to settle. The forms of dominance are too different to compare in a neat way. And then there's the part nobody likes to admit. Narrative matters. It always has. MVP is not voted on in a lab. It is voted on by people, and people respond to story. If a player feels like the face of a winning season, that helps. If a player feels like the same old answer, that can hurt even if he deserves it. If a player catches fire late, the timing can push him higher. If a player misses games, even for good reason, the door opens for someone else. If a new name rises and brings a fresh story, people get excited. That does not mean the award is fake. It just means that the race is shaped by more than numbers. This season has had all of that. Jokic had early control. Shai built steady power. Luka forced his way back into the talk. Wemby turned his rise into a real threat. No wonder the race keeps flipping. The timing of the season matters more than people think. Early dominance gives a player control of the story, but late momentum can shake everything. A hot finish feels bigger because it is fresher in people's minds. If a player is amazing in November, that matters. But if another player explodes in March and April, the whole race can feel different, even if the full season says otherwise. That is one reason these last weeks always carry so much weight. They do not erase the season, but they can change how the season is remembered. Luka's late surge fits that pattern. Wemby's rise fits that pattern. Shai holding his level under pressure fits that pattern. Jokic trying to keep his case strong through the full stretch fits it too.
The finish line is close enough now that every big game feels like a message. What also makes this race fun is that every side has a point that sounds right. If someone says Shai should win because he is the best player on one of the best teams and has been great all year, that makes sense. If someone says Jokic should win because nobody controls the game like he does and his total impact is still unreal, that makes sense too. If someone says Luka has reached a level of scoring and playmaking that few players in the world can even dream of, that is also true. If someone says Wemby changes the game more than anyone on defense and is doing things that do not fit his age, that is also makes sense. Usually one of these arguments would feel clearly stronger than the others. This year, they keep standing side by side, and that is what makes the debate so hard to kill. But if we're being honest, MVP races are often less about finding a perfect answer and more about choosing which kind of greatness matters most this season. That is the real question. Are you rewarding control, consistency, explosion, or transformation? Do you want the star who carried the cleanest winning case or the star who bent the sport the hardest? Do you want the player whose numbers look like a video game or the one whose team became a machine around him? Do you want the player who stayed steady or the one who exploded at the right time? These are not small details, they are the whole debate. And because there is no single rule that covers all of it, the award becomes a mirror. It shows what each voter values most. Right now, the race feels both clear and unclear at the same time. That sounds strange, but it is true. On one hand, you can look at the standings, the media feel, and the steady shape of the season and think the answer is right in front of you. On the other hand, you can look at impact numbers, on-court swings, raw production, and late-season surges and feel like the race is still wide open. That split is why fans keep arguing. They're not crazy. They're just looking at different parts of the same picture. One side sees order. The other sees chaos.
One side sees a leader, the other sees 4 different cases with no easy way to rank them. That tension is what has made this race one of the most talked about battles in years. The wild part is that no matter who wins, the other side will not go quiet. If Shai wins, people will say Jokic was still the most complete player alive, or that Luka had the stronger late push, or that Wemby changed the game in a deeper way. If Jokic wins, people will say voter comfort played a part, or that team record should have pushed Shai ahead.